Welcome to the What It Really Be Like podcast, where I sit down with people who I think have interesting jobs or life experiences that I want to know more about. This episode features U.S. expat Kaitlin Wichmann. If you're not familiar with the term expat, it's short for expatriate, which is synonymous with immigrant. So it's someone who left their home country to go live elsewhere. In this episode, I talked to Kaitlin about why she did this move, the expectations she had versus the realities, what she may have learned about her home country, and what she may have learned about herself. If you've ever thought about moving to another country, either temporarily or permanently, this will give you a good glimpse into what that may be like. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and consider leaving a review. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, as there is a video element, it would mean a great deal to me if you just subscribe, like, or especially leave a comment. Ask me a question about something maybe I didn't cover. Tell me maybe a topic that you want to hear for the next episode, or someone that you know that may want to be on the podcast. Any of those things may take you a few seconds and feel like a small gesture, but it's a big deal to a small channel like mine. So I appreciate your viewership and any support you can give. As always, if you or anyone you know is interested on being on the podcast, drop me a line. You can email me at wurblpod@gmail.com. That's WIRBLPOD. You can also follow or message me on Instagram at wurblpod. And now I give to you U.S. expat Kaitlin Wichmann. All right, Kaitlin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So you are originally from the U.S. and
I am.
You're currently living abroad. And,
That's correct.
you know, this is something that most people don't do. Most people don't leave their home country and live somewhere permanently or temporarily. So this is something I've been interested in hearing more about.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it's maybe like where you're born is not the best fit for you, or maybe you just need to experience something different. So I kind of want to hear your story and your take on this. So I guess we could start, just take me back to Kaitlin before you moved abroad.
Mm-hmm.
What was going on in your life? Like, what made you make this big change?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I was living in Los Angeles. So I went there for college, and I lived there for like 4 years and then 2 years after college. And I was working normal 9 to 5 job. I worked for really cool companies, like a really cool SaaS company, like pretty much as good as it gets for a corporate job. But I still just felt unfulfilled. And I think some people kind of just have that feeling when you're just like, I'm meant for something more than going into the office from 9 to 5. So I started taking on freelance clients, and I realized that I could make an income outside of a typical 9 to 5 corporate job. And that's when I first moved to Bali. I booked a round trip, 1 month trip to Bali, and I was supposed to do it while still doing my corporate job. But then I decided just to leave my corporate job, and then I just never took my return flight back to the US.
So you had a flight booked and you were just like, nah, not doing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So why didn't you get on that plane? What was, what had captivated you in Bali? Was it the lifestyle? Was it the location? Was it the change of pace?
I mean, I think it was always kind of the plan was just to move to Bali. I was just too scared to just book a one-way flight like that. Just like in my head, like that was really scary. But it was more, I mean, I loved living in Bali, but I didn't really have any connections anymore in Los Angeles. I gave up my apartment, like I ended my lease. I did have my car, which made it a little complicated, but it was just easier to live in Bali, especially with the affordability. And I was just getting started freelancing. So it made more sense for where I was in my life to stay there instead of Los Angeles, because they're two very opposite places.
Yeah. So I guess I do want to step back too and ask you, what drew you to Los Angeles? Because as far as I remember, you're not from Los Angeles, and I know Los Angeles is a place where a lot of people move to network, to see, you know, where they can make it or where they can fit in the world. So was that you, and what took you there to LA?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was drawn out to Los Angeles. I mean, first for the weather and then also entertainment industry. It's a city where something's always happening, like it's the place to be. And I got a good scholarship to a private university there. So that's kind of what drew me out there. And I think for where I was in my life then, it was a good fit for me. So yeah.
Okay. And you said that you started freelancing. So
Hmm.
was this like a conscious effort on your part? Like, hey, I need to adopt a source of income that's going to allow that flexibility so that I can live
Yeah,
abroad?
that's a great question. It was always a dream of mine. Like, I think pretty much everyone, or I don't know, a lot of people, that's kind of a dream, is to like freelance and not be tied down to a corporate job. Um, so that's kind of why I went into digital marketing and to paid advertising. I would say like my passion's actually more into like events and events management, but I knew that would be a lot harder to do remotely. So that's why it kind of came down to I had two really good job offers, and one was for a top talent agency in Los Angeles doing events, and I was like, it's like a dream job, but I knew I would be tied to Los Angeles forever. Or I had this SaaS startup in Santa Monica doing digital marketing, and I knew that digital marketing would lead me more on a path that eventually I could work remotely. So I made a conscious choice to accept the job in digital marketing. And then I had people reach out to me for freelancing. So it kind of all fell into my lap, but it was all because of choices I made as well.
Yeah, because I guess with that type of work, freelance marketing, it's like you can work from anywhere, obviously, but also anytime. Whereas like
Hmm.
events scheduling, whatever, you'd really have to be
Exactly.
set on a certain time
Yeah.
zone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like your life revolves around that. And that's the same with the entertainment industry. Your life revolves around your job. And I've always wanted my job just to be like, obviously, I want to be passionate about it, but I want my life to be the center of everything. I don't want my job to be the center of everything.
You want to work to live, not live to work, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
How long were you in Bali?
I was in Bali. So I had a visa for 6 months and I stayed for 3 months. And then it's a really transitional place. So everyone was going to Thailand. So I went to Thailand for a month. And then I went to Vietnam for a couple weeks. Um, and then I moved, and then I went to Argentina until coronavirus. And then I went back to the US.
You remind me of Where in the World is Carmen San Diego? Just can't pin you down.
Yeah.
So you went,
Uh,
go ahead.
no, I was just going to say it's almost, when you're living a digital nomad lifestyle, it's almost addictive. I mean, you did it too. Like, it's, you're always wanting to go to like the next new place, and it's just so exciting.
Yeah, it's always fresh, right? It's like
Hmm.
you're always exploring in a way. Like you
Hmm.
start to settle a little bit, and there's,
Hmm.
for me, I found like a lot of joy in like settling into a place, finding a
For sure.
routine, and starting to live like a local.
Hmm.
It was fun for me to kind of blend in that way.
Definitely.
But then
Definitely.
it's also fun to mix it up and just see something. It's just fun when every day's like new, right? I guess is one
Hmm.
way to put it.
Yeah. And I think it depends what your friends are doing too, because that can have a big impact. So now that I'm living in Lisbon, I have a lot of like long-term friends, like people that have leases here. So I feel like really stable here. But when you're living in Bali, it's like everyone's just there for a month or two and then they move on to another place. And then like
Mm.
either you just keep making new friends or you move too. So
Yeah, and Lisbon, to my knowledge, since you brought it up, has been
mhm.
a hotspot for the last, I don't know, a couple of years at least for
Mhm.
expats, right? So
Mhm.
I guess, so you said that you went back to the US during COVID times. Did you
Yeah,
go straight to Lisbon after that?
I did. Yeah. So I applied for a visa. I had never been to Lisbon. But I'd heard great things online about it. So I just applied for a visa and I got approved and I moved here and I was like, I really hope I like it. And I love it. And I haven't looked back since.
That's a pretty big leap. I mean, you
Yeah.
you just knew about the place, you had never seen it, and
Yeah,
that's a pretty big commitment to get a visa and just and uproot your life.
definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just kind of looking at it. I knew I wanted to come here and I wanted the option to stay for more than 3 months. Um, so that's kind of just how I looked at it. And I was like, if I don't like it, I can always go back to the
Yeah.
US. Like,
US will
I
always
don't know.
be here, I think.
Exactly. I hope
So,
so.
yeah, so let's pause on that for a second, because for people that don't know, the US passport allows you visa-free travel to Europe 3 months at a time every 6 months. So you didn't want to be tied down to that constraint. And
Exactly.
so you got
Yeah.
a visa. And, a lot of people don't realize this. It's actually pretty difficult to get a visa to live in Europe.
Mm.
It's like usually special circumstances, like you got to be a student or you got to be hired as an employee, which is kind of hard to do. Or I think there's a freelance visa. Is that the one you did? Or can you tell us about your process there?
Yeah. I do think it's changed, but I have the D7 visa, which is actually for retirement purposes, or passive income. So my income isn't exactly passive because I do work for my money, but it's considered like passive enough that I got approved. And yeah, I know they've gotten a little stricter over the years, and now they just launched a digital nomad visa also. So I would probably have that now, but it's similar to what I have the D7. Um, but yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I guess there's just from what I've seen, there's like mixed opinions on, um, these European countries attracting freelance workers, because
hmm
there's a lot of programs that the government creates, like the freelance visa.
hmm
I know Estonia has like a nomad visa. There's a number of countries that do this. And in fact, there's, golden visa programs where you can invest or buy property and then get citizenship
hmm
after a certain amount of years. But I think there's been some pushback against these programs by locals,
hmm
because of rising costs of housing and whatnot. So this is something I wanted to get into too. Um, what's the reception like with the locals, for people moving there?
yeah. I read a lot of stuff online. I think there's a lot of hate going on online, but all the Portuguese people that I meet in real life are really, really welcoming, really kind. Um, so I've never had any issues with that. But I do know, obviously, there's a housing crisis here, and um, you know, everyone's always looking for someone to blame, and it's easy to blame kind of digital nomads. I think a lot of it kind of has to do with Airbnb and just like over tourism as well here.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely some issues, and um, that's why I try and be careful, like saying like, "Oh, you should move to Portugal," because it's like everyone can't move to Portugal. Um, so yeah, but all the Portuguese I meet here are super welcoming and super happy to have so many people from different cultures and wanting to come here.
Yeah, isn't it funny? Like, as a side note, it seems like so many of the hot topics online like that are really just online. Like, you hear about how
hmm
enraged people are, but then in your
Yeah,
everyday life, you never really see it.
yeah. I see stuff like on Reddit and it like blows up, and I don't know. It's also, I will say too, the type of people that I meet are Portuguese that are at events that I'm at, or like, they're the type of people that are around international people. So there is a chance that like the type of people that are on Reddit, like I'm not meeting them day to day. So it's 100% valid that there's some people with those opinions.
True.
But it does get like blown out of proportion, kind of like how people are like, oh, everyone in the US has guns, or, you like read that online, but
We're shooting
it's just,
everyone all the time. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's like people ask me here that have never gone to the US. They're like, "Oh, or like, are you scared you're gonna get shot like every day. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Europe feels very safe.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Um, okay, so I guess let's talk about Lisbon and Portugal in particular. What are the things that kind of drew you there? I know you said you heard good things, and
Mhm.
what are how was the reality different than the expectations?
It's honestly very similar to what I expected. I had been to Madeira before, the island,
Hmm.
so I knew I really liked that. But I was looking for a place with really good weather. Weather, like, year-round's really like, warm weather year-round's really
Yeah.
important to me. I was looking at affordability, safety is really, really, really important to me, and then other people working online, like a community, um, some English spoken, which that's something that really, really surprised me, especially, like, coming from Buenos Aires before, where there wasn't as much English. I was really nervous to come here, and it's insane, like, how many people speak English. Like, it's crazy. But then it makes it hard for me to learn Portuguese because everyone speaks English.
Right.
So,
Where's the
yeah,
incentive? That was going to be
exactly.
one of my questions. So I guess
Mhm,
if we can talk a little bit more about that, the language barrier. Now,
mhm,
most at least in most European capitals, I've never had a problem with English only,
mhm.
just because it's so common in Europe, especially the larger cities. But I imagine, well, first it's good to like just learn a little bit of language because it goes a long way with the locals, right? When you kind of make an
Mhm.
effort there. But
Definitely.
can you tell me about um, because you do have to deal with like officials, right? Government officials and whatnot. So
Mhm.
I'm sure there are times when you kind of hit that language barrier. So can you tell us more about that?
Definitely. Yes. I will say usually someone speaks some English. Um, but I've been in the hospital a lot recently, the public hospital, and there I will come across people that don't speak any English, and then usually I'll just use Google Translate. Um, but yeah, it's frustrating for sure. I'm embarrassed. Like, I'm embarrassed every day that I don't speak more Portuguese, especially when I tell people that I've lived here over a year. But I can say for me, I really try. I go to Portuguese lessons twice a week. I try and speak Portuguese whenever I can, and that's more than most people. So I am trying. Um, I have a very strong accent, which is embarrassing,
Mm.
um, and I'm self-conscious about, but it's okay. So yeah, there's occasionally, or like the optometrist I go to, like the lady I was seeing, she didn't speak that much English, but you always can get by. Like, everyone speaks enough that you can get by, or I can pull out some Portuguese if I need to, and there's always Google Translate. So yeah, it's not an issue.
Thank God for Google Translate, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that just right there in the palm of your hand anytime. I can't imagine traveling before that, like all the walls people must
definitely.
have hit. So
Yeah, it's a savior.
you mentioned you went to the hospital. This is a big topic I wanted to hit,
Mhm.
and that's healthcare
Yeah.
because healthcare is much different in Europe. Um, so can you tell me about your experience with the healthcare system? Like, are you covered, as an expat there? Like, what
Mhm.
are the details there?
Yeah, yeah, I'm 100% covered. I have a public health number called SNS. So I back in November, I had an emergency, um, and I was taken to the hospital, and then I went to the hospital probably like 10 days in a row. I didn't stay there, but I was in the emergency room a lot. I did have to wait sometimes a couple hours. It's all depending on how urgent your issue was. So since mine had to do with my eye, it was very urgent. So I think I waited a lot less than most people. So if you just have something, I don't know, like you're really sick, you might have to wait like, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours. So it is kind of crazy. But you can also go to a private hospital and pay, and then you're seen a lot quicker. I did try doing that, but they referred me to the public hospital, because anything that's really serious, you need to go to the public hospital. So I've had pretty good experiences, and then I've been going back. I go back every like month or 2 months to see a specialist, and she speaks English, and yeah, it's been fairly good, and it's free. I don't pay anything. So
Yeah, incredible. So
yeah,
all good experiences then with the healthcare
yeah,
system. I had
definitely.
I had one minor experience. I ran out of a medication when I was in
Okay.
Lisbon, and so I
Hmm.
went and picked some up, and
Hmm.
no questions asked. They were like, "Okay, well
Yeah.
here's what we have," and it was a quarter of the
Hmm.
cost that it was in the U.S.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah. I don't know what would have happened. Like when I was living in the US, I didn't have insurance. So if this had happened with my eye, I would probably be in a lot of debt right now. So
Yeah, no kidding, right? We have a lot of problems here with our healthcare. So good to know that that you're taken care of there, and that's important for quality of life, I think. Healthcare is something that's better, right? That you enjoy more. So, what are some other things about living in Portugal that you enjoy a lot more than the U.S.?
hmm. I mean, I think both have their pros and cons. But I like that I can live here. I mean, a lot of what I like is kind of just tied into like freelance, which I mean I could do in the US too.
Hmm.
Um, but I like having like flexibility over my day. I like all the different there's just like a lot of different like opportunity in Lisbon. And like just kind of like networking, and the type of people here are really cool. So for example, like tonight, like I'm at a cool like social like membership club. Tomorrow I'm going to like a cool brunch with this club that it's called 1,000 Club, that it's they want to have 500 Portuguese and 500 foreigners and just bring all these people together for like networking and socializing. Um, and that's not something I had ever been a part of in the US, obviously. So it's just I think my favorite thing is just being around so many different cultures. And like when I was living in Kansas City, like it was, I mean, it was during COVID too. So it was just like literally just people that were raised in Kansas. So it's so cool meeting tons of like Brazilians, tons of Portuguese, everyone from everywhere in Europe, like just meeting people from all over. That's probably my favorite thing about being here in Portugal.
What are some of the things that, because you mentioned trade-offs, right? And that I agree. I think that every country has its trade-offs, and
Hmm.
it's just kind of like how it fits you, right, as a person. So, what are some of the downsides about living there?
Hmm. The bureaucracy, like everything, like for example, like going to the hospital, like nothing's really like easy kind of. So it's like they'll tell me my appointment, and then there's no way that I can like change the appointment because I don't have an online account because I'm not a citizen. So it's just like I have to show up like in 2 months at this time at the hospital. Um, and like not everything's online. Um, a lot of stuff you have to go in person for that, like maybe in the US you wouldn't have to. There's a lot of like little differences too, like they won't leave your packages at your door, so I have to go to like a couple blocks away and wait in line, and they'll usually just speak Portuguese to try and get my package. Um, and I think another difference that probably a con too is a lot of the service workers usually are like it's like the opposite of the US where the customer's always right and like they want to please you. It's kind of the opposite here. They're just like you'll go to the bank, they'll be like, "Why are you here? Why didn't you just call? Like this could have been a phone call." And I'm like, "I need help. I'm locked out of my account." Like they're not very empathetic and not very customer service friendly. So I'd say that's a con. It's just like little things.
I noticed that too. I notice a lot of the wait staff at restaurants stuff. They act like it's a
Yeah.
privilege that you're here, not that we're serving you, kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
and then like professionals, like say repair people, like they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'll be there tomorrow at 3," and they don't show up for like 3 days. that kind of
Yeah,
thing too.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, not a lot of big downsides, I guess. At least in your case.
Yeah.
What's How about this? What for me, one of the things I really love about traveling, especially staying places and living like a local, is that it shifts my perspective a lot on things.
Mhm.
I think that you have an idea of how other people live in the world, but you really don't fully understand it until you're living there or you're staying there or whatever. And
Mhm.
it really gets my gears turning and whatnot. So, can you tell me in what ways living there or living abroad in general has shifted your perspective on home life in the U.S.?
Hmm. I think I've definitely changed, but I don't realize it kind of until I go back to the US
Hmm.
or I meet like Americans here and I'm like, "Whoa, they're so American." And like but it's just like little things. I don't know. I think at my core like I'm still kind of an American and I still have the American like I don't know, like ambitions and like personality. Um, but I think, yeah, you just kind of adapt to the place that you're at. Like my sense of even like style has kind of changed. My like how loud I talk has changed because I want to like adapt to the place that I'm at. But nothing too crazy. Like I think at my core, I'm still the same person. So.
Okay. I guess how about this? I noticed as Americans we have this perception like when we go places that we're kind of like the loud obnoxious Americans, which I think is true sometimes, but honestly like
Mhm.
most people didn't really have that opinion. What I found more often, they had pretty positive opinions about Americans. One of them was that we are very friendly. Like we'll talk to anybody about
Mhm.
anything and we'll be really cool with
Mhm.
them. The other one that kind of surprised me though was we're known to have this like um, determinism where we're just like we're
Mhm.
set out to do this and we're gonna get it done. Like that's kind of an American thing. So have you
Mhm.
have you been told anything similar about Americans or maybe any negative things?
I would say the exact same ones as you, pretty much. Um, but yeah, I think a big difference too, like whenever I say that I'm American, people are immediately like, "Whoa, she's so rich." I think that's kind of a big like you're from the US, like you must have a big salary, you must have a great job. I think that's the thing I get a lot and I'm like, "No, I work for myself." And I mean, sometimes I have American clients, sometimes I have European clients, but yeah, people just and I mean, I got that a lot too when I was like traveling in Asia too. But yeah, even in Portugal, it's like, well, you're American. Um, you were kind of like born lucky almost. I get that too. Like Portuguese will be like, they feel like they were just born kind of unlucky. And I think sometimes they're jealous of Americans that have American jobs and then move here.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's usually something around money or jobs um, that I get. And I think American too, they're like usually Americans kind of just dress like brighter. We're more like unique. While in Portugal, everyone kind of tries to fit in. Um, so I think that's a difference too.
Interesting. I noticed in my travels that, like I said, you kind of start just blending in with the locals, whether you're intentional about
Hmm.
it or not. And
Yeah.
then it's so obvious when you spot Americans. Like
Hmm.
there's just something like you can just kind of recognize your own
Hmm.
people, even if they're
Hmm.
dressed like kind of like a local. Like there's just a
Hmm.
way that people carry themselves or whatever. I don't know. It's just like I'm always like that guy's American or that person's American, and I end up
Hmm.
talking to him, and it's like sure enough. So that's kind
Hmm.
of funny.
Hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. And another thing I notice as an American abroad is when people befriend you, they always want to bring up politics. They always ask me
Hmm.
like my opinion on Trump or Biden or
Hmm.
whatever. And then they always want to talk about guns too. And like,
Hmm.
man, your country's so crazy for the guns and whatnot.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
funny the things people have interest in the US.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it just has to do with media. Like it just gets blown up. So yeah, I get a lot of Trump, a lot of the guns too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What things do you miss about the US?
Um, I definitely miss my family. I miss my family a lot. Um, and also like all my friends there. Um, I miss like getting stuff delivered is so much easier. Everything's kind of like at the tip of your fingers. Like you can get anything off Amazon.
Mhm.
When I Google stuff, it's in English. I miss that. Um, Everything's a lot more modern. It's just different, but I mean, sometimes I miss it. Um, Everything you can get everything so much quicker. I miss fast food. So
24
yeah,
hour
it's nothing I can't.
convenience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a lot more convenient. I've had to learn a lot of patience here,
Mm.
which I think maybe that's kind of an American thing, just being kind of impatient.
Mm.
So yeah, you can't live in Portugal without being patient. So I've had to learn that. So yeah, there's like little things that I miss, but nothing I can't live without.
Yeah, that's something that I was curious about too. It's like, you lived in the US for most of your life, so you've built up friends and obviously you have family and
Mm.
whatnot. So I imagine you go visit them periodically, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I do. Yeah. Probably like once a year or once every other year, I'll go out to Los Angeles and then I go home to Kansas at least once, maybe twice a year. So,
Okay. Um, how do you know, like, do you have a plan going forward? Like, how long are you going to stay in Lisbon? Are you going to go somewhere else?
mm,
Do you ever plan on
yeah,
going back home? Like, tell me about that.
I have no idea. Like, that's how I've been my whole life. Like, I'm just taking it day by day. Um, like 5 months ago, I signed a 3-year lease here.
Wow.
Um, yeah, but you only have to, you can get out of it after 1 year, like really easily. So it's pretty much a 1 year lease. They just prefer longer leases. So I do see myself here for the next 3 years, and I do see myself getting citizenship. So that's kind of something I'm working towards, and that takes 5 years. Um, so I'm kind of working towards that. Other than that, I don't know if there's really anywhere else I want to live. The only reason I'd probably go back to the US is for kind of like job opportunities. A lot of jobs, even freelance, they want you to be in the US.
Hmm.
And I mean, I have nothing against the US, so it might make sense later on. I don't know. It's not in my plan right now. I've looked into Australia a lot too. Never been there, but I think it would be a cool place to like live and settle down. So if that could work eventually, that would be really cool. But I have no idea. Yeah.
And nor do you have to know, right? I mean,
No,
be in the moment and do what feels right.
exactly.
Another thing I want to touch on is the expat community. I think there's a
Yeah.
pretty big one there in Lisbon, so
Yeah.
I'm sure that's been helpful in your case.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane here. There's so many expats and so many people like living here permanently. Um, I don't think it gets any better. Like, I think we have probably the biggest community in the world.
Wow.
Um, yeah. Just like walking on the streets, you'll meet, yeah, people from all over. And it's just, yeah, there's a lot of tourists, but there's a lot of people that are living here long term. And Um, they're really easy to meet, and yeah, just the coolest. I honestly think Lisbon attracts like the coolest people in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I was there, so I get it.
Yeah, yeah, okay. You're like facts.
No, it was a great time. Lisbon's a really cool city because it's for me in Portugal in general, but it's got like a perfect mix of like old and new,
Mhm.
right? It's like a historic place, but it's like
Mhm.
also
Mhm.
cutting edge modern.
Mhm.
Great weather, like you said, probably the best weather in
Mhm.
Europe.
Mhm.
It's relatively affordable when you compare it to
Yeah.
some other countries.
Yeah.
Great people, great food, and it's no
Yep.
wonder that this place really blew up in the last handful of years because it used to kind of be like a hidden gem, and
Mhm.
now it's like the expat like destination, basically. It seems like.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I think it just really attracts like-minded people, people that want to change their life and work remotely and just live in a really cool place. So you have all the people that move here, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun.
And you're doing it. You're living that life. How cool is that?
Try and do.
Yeah. Anything that we haven't touched on that you feel is important for people to understand about expat life?
um I think the only thing I can think of is just that, like, people ask me, like, every day how I do it, and I think it's just kinda like you get stuck in your head, and you have to realize that you only have one life to live, and you can always, always, always move back to wherever you're from or move somewhere new, like, it's just why not? And it is scary, like, just book maybe 2 weeks here and then because that's what I did. I did 2 weeks and then I went home for Christmas and then I moved back here, like, permanently. So then it's all in your head, like, it's scary, but then all of a sudden you're here and you make friends, and I mean, occasionally you might be sad, but you get through it, and I think it makes you a stronger person if you live at least a month or 2 in a different country, and you get to see how other people live, and you don't need a lot of money. I think that's another misconception too. It's like, "Oh, you must be so rich," but it's you don't need a lot of money. Like, if anything, you can live cheaper here. So, um, yeah, just if you can, do it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and you mentioned it makes you a better person. I agree with that. Travel in general
Mhm.
does. And you'd mentioned yourself
Mhm.
like it's made you a more patient person.
Definitely.
So, well, cool. I think that's a good note to end on. Kaitlin,
Cool.
thank you so much for showing up and sharing your experience. I think this was a great episode,
Of
and
course.
people should take a lot
Mhm.
from it.
Of course. Thank you, Brandon.
Okay, have a good one.
You too.